What you are listening to is real. The participants are not actors. They are actual litigants with a case pending in the squared circle. Both parties have agreed to dismiss their cases and have their disputes settled here in our forum, the Turnbuckle Debate.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Turnbuckle Debate. My name is Sneed.
I'm Chad.
I'm Tom, the OG Fit Kid, the staple of the Turnbuckle Debate.
And our special guest joining us today from a Wrestling Gal podcast, Ella J. What's going on? How are you?
I'm fantastic. How are you guys today?
Doing all right.
Good.
Doing okay.
Happy to have you on. Tell a little about what you have going on, Ella, because I see you doing all of this stuff. You have a Wrestling Gal podcast. You correct me if I'm wrong. You contribute to WrestleZone, SE Scoops. Let us know what you got going on. Fill us in.
I do a lot, to be honest. We'd be here all day. So yeah, I host honestly about 4 or 5 different podcasts. I have my own. I'm a host on SE Scoops, like you said, Women's Wrestling Talk, Bell to Bells, also Capital Championship Wrestling. Right before this, we just got filming a podcast episode with Hyon that'll be coming out. I'm also a writer for WrestleZone. I contributed for the PWI Women's 150. I edit Got TV's podcast. That's Mickey James, Lisa Marie Verrett, and SoCal Val. And I know I'm forgetting some stuff, but I do a lot within the wrestling media world.
That is awesome. Like a true workhorse. Like how did you get involved with WrestleZone? How did you, I've been following WrestleZone for years.
Me too.
Yeah, so that's actually coming up on 1 year anniversary would be May 28th. So later this month, it'll be officially a year. Bill Pritchard was following me on Twitter. He's one of the people in charge there over at WrestleZone, one of the editors over there. And he had seen my content in women's wrestling through SE Scoops and my own podcast and with God TV and all of that, and brought me on board. And so now I write a women's wrestling weekly column and will type up a lot of articles related to women's wrestling, because I feel like that's mainly what I'm known for, which I'm very grateful that I've been able to kind of build a brand around myself through and keep a consistent theme in a lot of my work.
That's really cool. And I have to ask, because I am a subscriber to PWI, what was that experience like, being able to contribute to the top list?
It was amazing. And honestly, when I was brought on board, in the issue too, I got to write an article as well. It was very mind blowing, because that's a magazine I grew up writing or wanting to write for, and would literally go to the newsstands to go get it. And it was very, very intense too, because it was not just me, it was 6 other people on this committee, and we all came in with our own biases and stuff. I was kind of brought in as the indie expert, because I watch and pay attention to a lot of the independent circuit, especially within women's wrestling. So I kind of brought that perspective, and we had our own little arguments and arguments for people why they should be higher or where they should be placed on a list. So that was super, super cool, and I hope to get brought back this year.
That's super fun. Okay, before I gotta ask, now that you said that, before we get into the debate, give us one independent female wrestler that we should be keeping an eye on right now.
One that's underrated, I feel like. I mean, okay, there's the obvious answer, which I feel like is Allie Ketch, because she's literally everywhere, and I literally on the other side of her, I have an Allie Ketch photo behind me. She's fantastic, but I feel like somebody who's very underrated is Lainey Luck.
Yes.
She does a lot in Chicago, in tech. I mean, she's everywhere basically, but I feel like she hasn't truly been given a true chance to blossom. We've seen her in Ring of Honor a few times. She is absolutely taking over Chicago and Texas, but I want to see her get more television opportunities, because she's absolutely fantastic. And there's nobody else doing the 2-turned party unicorn stuff ever.
Yeah, I love Lainey Luck. She's worked with Mission Pro a bit, and I'm with you. I feel like I thought I would see her in a bigger promotion by now. And Allie Ketch, I mean, we have a GCW show here, and we sing her praises on the fucking GCW show every week. She's
I
the
love
best.
her.
I do too. She's amazing.
Yeah.
What a worker.
Bussy. Everybody go check out Bussy. They're killing it. Yeah. You guys ready to get into it?
Yeah, so we'll get our 3 topics, and then we'll go about 10 to 15 minutes a piece. And you don't have to really listen to much of what Tom says. So.
Hey.
All right, are you guys ready?
Let's do it.
Let's get into it. All right, so our first topic of the evening. Will Paige VanZant be more successful in wrestling than Ronda Rousey?
To me, this is easy. Hell yes. She looks like she wants to be there. She looks like she's having fun. She's into it. Ronda Rousey, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. She doesn't look like she's even into it. She doesn't look like she wants to be there. Seeing Paige, seeing even her social media posts, it's like she can't wait to do this. Like, she's totally digging it. I'm so excited to see what they actually do with her, how far it goes, because I think it could be huge. I think she could blow Ronda out of the water.
I get what you're saying, Tom, because I totally agree. I've been very critical of this run of Rousey. I'm a longtime Rousey fan all the way back to the UFC days. But the way she grew disgruntled with the UFC fan base, I saw this coming with the WWE fan base. So when she came back and she doesn't seem like her heart is fully in it, I agree with that. My only thing, I think Paige has the potential, and but I still don't know where her heart is with this whole thing. And let's be honest, her success to trump Rousey's success, Rousey had such a bigger star power coming into WWE. She was such a presence in just media in general. I think it's going to be hard to get past that. But if we're talking strictly just like success in wrestling, depending on how Tony Khan books Paige, she could do something really, really special there. I think she does have star quality, but I'm kind of hesitant to say she'll surpass Ronda.
I think you bring up a good point too. Are we talking like success, star power in general, or like success in like in-ring accomplishments and like in-ring work, like wrestling too? I feel like that's another big question. Like, how do you guys define it? Because I can see Paige thriving in the wrestling aspect into that, especially she seems like, I mean, we're still at the very beginning of her career and her training. We don't really know a lot that goes on behind the scenes with her training with Gangrel and all of that. But I do see a lot of strides made on AEW with her, and it seems like she's putting in the work and is really adapting really quickly. And I mean, at least from what we hear, Rousey started off that way, like training consistently and like was very over and was training with Natalia, going out of her way starting out. But definitely as time has gone on and as it's progressed, it seems like her heart, like you said, isn't in it. However, we're talking about star power. I mean, Rousey came in, I mean, they kind of have the same background, but Rousey was like the top woman in basically all of sports for the longest time. So I don't think Paige can maybe overtake that aspect of it, the star power, the stock value and all of that. But if we're talking wrestling, then I think Paige VanZant is definitely on a trajectory to surpass Rousey in that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think as far as star power, I don't think that Paige will beat her in star power. I don't think that's, but if we are talking with in-ring accomplishments, I think from the way she seems right now, if she continues on and she's booked well, she seems like she's having a blast with it, man. I think with in-ring, I think she can be a very nice and dominant champion in the company.
Well, the thing she has going for her too is, she does have that similar base. I mean, she doesn't have the judo base that Ronda has, but she's coming from an athletic background, a physical fighting background. So she has that. Yeah. I think Ronda is, man, it's such a big mountain to climb because like you said, Ella, she was arguably the biggest female athlete, arguably a top 5 just athlete in general during that time. I would say maybe the only female athlete that would maybe be bigger than her at that time was Venus and Serena, and Ronda was it, man. Like you could attribute all of the push to the Evolution pay-per-view, all of that was Ronda coming in. You know, they really, really got behind the women's division, I feel like, with Ronda. They main evented Mania. I think that was a little bit because of Ronda. I think we would have gotten there, but I don't know if we would have gotten there that quickly. So star power, no way. I think her star power was created pre-pro wrestling. So I think that's hard to beat. But in ring, man, I think it's going to be very interesting to see how they book her, especially because when Paige first came into AEW, it looked like she was going the heel route, which I think is always a great way to go with a newbie, with someone coming in. It's a lot easier to get heat and just be that bad guy. And now with the kind of the shifting of Scorpio back to a baby face and Ethan Page and Dan Lambert, that kind of odd relationship going on right now, I don't know how that's going to play out. I think if she has to play the babyface role, it might be a little bit detrimental to her gaining steam quicker. But if the writing on the wall that I'm seeing, if Ethan Page and Dan Lambert turn on Scorpio Sky, like I think is going to happen, and Paige saddles up with those two and they go into the heel dynamic, and you get Paige being a heel in feuds with some of the talent, like the Tony Storms and the Ruby Sohos of the world, put her in there with some qualified people, I think she could really become a really fun part of that AEW roster.
I think she has to stay heel, man. I think that's gotta happen.
Seems to fit her well. She seems to enjoy it. And like I totally meant in the wrestling world, Ronda's a top 5, maybe the top female athlete of all time that people just recognize now.
Yeah.
So it's hard to top that, but in the wrestling world, I definitely think that we could see Paige surpass her.
I think so too. I think it myself included, people are growing, I don't know what the right word is, irritated, or like I don't know what the word is with Ronda. Like she's just losing that, it's not respect, like investment, I feel like, too, especially to she just seems like not sloppy, I mean, basically, and then like doesn't seem like she cares, or that, I mean, at one point she was fed up with the fans and all of that, and we saw that demonstrated on social media. So I think people's opinion, as much as Ronda came into a lot of like very praise and people were excited, her coming back to the Rumble, a lot of people were just like getting the go away heat. Basically, that's how I felt when she came back. I'll be perfectly honest. And I think fans, not all of them, obviously, but I think a large majority of them are now growing of just like go away. And so I think people are going to be more invested now in these new faces like Paige VanZant and AEW, and then people crossing over. So I think Paige has a lot of potential, and I do hope that she goes the heel route. I think where Rousey is now, her wrestling stuff is dwindling a little bit, at least from the fans' perception. Maybe that's just me talking, so maybe it's just me hoping that Paige surpasses that. But I think as of right now, the fans don't hate Paige yet. So
yeah,
when you see somebody like Ronda losing interest, you lose interest in her. Like, you know, it just works both ways. So if you're going to lose interest, you're going to lose the popularity you had. And wrestling fans will be the first to turn on you.
Why should we be passionate about you as a character when you aren't passionate about what you are doing?
Bingo.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not the fans being haters. It's like, we feel what you're putting out. That's what a fan, we connect to that energy, to that emotion you put out. And honestly, like, I mean, Ronda's always going to be pretty great in the ring, but like even the Charlotte match, it just felt to me. And a lot of her promos just feel uninspired. Like she's phoning it in. It really feels like she's reading off a cue card. And I'm with you, Ella. Like when she came back, I was like, man, like this is a payday, because when she made those tweets about the fans, and there was all these journalists, some people kind of taking up for her and being like, oh, it's kayfabe, she's working the fans. And I was like, you guys didn't follow her during UFC, because these tweets were happening exactly the same way when she got disgruntled with that fan base. And this is that all over again. But man, Paige, I'm really excited for Paige. When she first came in, I was like, there was something about her. She had a little bit of that it factor. When Dan Lambert had all of those fighters, she was the one to me that popped out of the group. Like,
Well,
she had some personality.
She was the one that we said from the beginning when they did the American Top Team thing that she was the one that needed to stick around.
Yeah.
Out of everybody that came through, she was the one that needed to stick around.
Even the first night they appeared on AEW and you saw just 8 people in the ring, people who didn't know who they were, she stood out above everybody else.
Yep.
So I'm excited. I'm really excited to see what she does. And
her husband and boyfriend doesn't need to deal with her though.
Yeah, they need to eliminate her boyfriend off TV. Like, just let her be a killer. Yeah. Just let her be a killer.
Yeah. All right. Does anybody have any final thoughts before we move on to the second topic?
I think we're all pretty much in agreement.
Yeah,
I think so.
Yeah.
All right. So we'll move on to the second topic of the evening. Ella, this is the topic that you brought to the table, which is, should John Cena have turned heel? And I'll defer to you since it's your question.
See, I bring this up though. However, I can see the argument for both of it too. From a business perspective, the moment WWE went PG, I would say no, because John Cena is the absolute epitome of the younger demographic. I mean, he's on cereal boxes. He's been in kids' movies. He was called a Fruity Pebble at one point. If you're talking about business-wise and focusing on your demographic, then no, like John Cena should have never turned heel. However, if you're talking about the maybe older audience or the fans that have been like lifelong fans or pre-PG, and also I think it would just bring a lot of allure and really edginess to the WWE product. That would have been such a shock for him to turn heel. I think a lot of people though would have been cheering him because it would have been really cool and really edgy and different for John to see a different element of John Cena. We saw a little bit back in the Thugonomics days, but even when he was heel, people were loving him still, even though he was a heel. So I think if he were to turn heel after WWE turned PG, I don't think it would have worked per se for business, but I also can see the argument of wanting him to, because it would be such a shock value and would really make him break down and have a different character and a different trajectory, I think, and could have had so many different cool storylines. So business wise versus like me personally and the shock value are like two different arguments I can see in my own debate.
I mean, for 15 years, no competition, WWE really had no reason to go out and do anything.
Mm-hmm.
If AEW was around 15 years ago, maybe WWE looks for a shock value to do something like that. But when they're controlling everything and they're the one major company, that they kind of got away with doing what they wanted. So it's just, I think, a matter of the times that it just wasn't needed. And the little kids, it would have hurt the little kid fan base, the girl fan base, the women fan base. Could tell the difference when a chance for Let's Go Cena to Cena sucks.
Yeah.
Tell who is chant and what. So I just think they didn't want to lose it at that point. But I think it would have been fun if would have been a great shock value if they needed to do it. And, Vince was controlling the narrative and just wouldn't do it. And I think it would have went over pretty well with the right story.
That's a great point, Tom. Because like if they would have had competition, say around 2011, 2012, would they have pulled the trigger? Because look what they did with Roman. Roman was in that position where like people were hating on him. That was probably the worst Rumble reaction. Me included, Ella, me included.
Still to this day, don't at me.
Yeah. Yeah. Same.
I'm with you, Ella. I don't.
But like they flipped it, and they actually made him heel. And now for the fan base, people are loving it. I've always kind of been out on Roman. But man, Ella kind of said everything that I was thinking. There's two sides to the coin. I totally see from the hardcore wrestling fan, you're wanting that NWO Hogan moment with Cena. I mean, that turn for the hardcore base would just ignite. I mean, it would be must-see TV. He sticks a dagger in the WWE, turns heel on the fan base. It would have been so much fun. But at that time, they were selling so many t-shirts. He was doing all the Make-A-Wish Foundation stuff. I mean, the guy is like a consummate just hero to so many little kids. And I think it could have hurt the company in some ways, honestly, at that time. I think with the hardcore base, it would have been phenomenal. But WWE has never been, at least in the last 20 years, they're not really about the hardcore base. They count on the hardcore base to just kind of be there. They're all about pushing and bridging into the casual base, the mainstream, and getting those fans. And I feel like maybe a turn at that time would have hurt that type of global domination into the mainstream that WWE was doing. But me selfishly, as a watching from the late 80s fan, him not turning is what kind of pushed me away from pro wrestling at one point. Like I was so disgruntled with it just being the same thing. Mm-hmm. So I think for me, yeah, he should have turned heel because I would have loved it. But for the company, I kind of get why they didn't do it.
I mean, they didn't even have another a fan favorite to replace him, and I think that also hurt. If they would have had somebody they could have trusted,
they still don't.
That's because you don't build stars in WWE.
Yeah, they still don't have someone to replace Cena.
I mean, they did have at one point, like, Punk was so over with the crowd, but then again, Punk was also like on his way out. So I don't know how long it would have lasted, or maybe it would have changed the trajectory of Punk's WWE tenure if he was the go-to guy. I don't know.
I mean, they wouldn't get behind Punk or Bryan, and both of them got themselves over more than Cena ever did.
I mean, imagine in an alternate universe, the pipe bomb happening, Cena shortly thereafter turning heel, and then CM Punk taking that babyface, almost Stone Cold Steve Austin type of role. That's an Attitude Era way to book that.
Yeah,
you know,
I agree.
Fuck that. Turn him heel. Turn him heel. I get the business thing. I get it.
Love it.
It's professional wrestling.
Oh,
like when Hogan turned heel, fuck the kids because but listen, because we were kids when it happened. And what are we still talking about today?
100%.
It didn't make us any less of a wrestling fan because he turned heel. It made us more of a wrestling fan, even if you're not selling. I mean, you're still selling merchandise. I'm sure Hogan's NWO run sold just as much. Well, maybe not as much, but sold a ton of merchandise.
Oh, that NWO
shirt is one of the best-selling shirts of all time.
So
fuck the kids.
I know it sounds bad, but seriously though, we're still talking about that heel turn.
That's true.
That shaped a whole generation of wrestling fans. And I think if Cena done it, it could have had the same impact, and we would have been talking about it today. Now, I've heard Cena talk recently too. I think it was a few months ago. He said that I think that he wanted to turn heel because he said in interviews that, you know, he sees that there could have been 10 years of story that he had, God. You know, 10 years of different kind of storytelling if they had turned him heel. But he said, I don't make those decisions. So I think he would have liked to have turned heel.
He was too busy learning Chinese to push into those, you know, those markets. He was the consummate company guy, but yeah.
I mean, to be fair, like, maybe it's not a fair comparison. Like, media wise, Miz does like almost all of the media and appearances and all of that, and he has made himself known for like being a heel, and he's been at the Be a Star rallies too. Granted, he doesn't have as much wishes granted, but I mean, he's pretty much done everything else that Cena has, like, for the company, I would say.
And he's
very
like a shitbag heel.
Great point.
That's a very good point. Yeah. Like what? And here's the thing: it's not like we're living in kayfabe land.
No.
WWE, you have these heels on TV being themselves on social media. So what would it have really affected John Cena's Make-A-Wish type of personality to be a heel? Would it have affected it? You know, and Sneed, to your point, how you were talking about how when Hogan turned, that's still one of those moments that everyone thinks about and talks about. When was the last time in WWE that a moment as big as a true dastardly John Cena heel turn, what was the last thing they've done that would have been as big as that could have been?
The only thing that I can think of that can compare would be the Shield.
Yeah, that's what I thought of too with Rollins. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't think that would have been as big as Cena turning. You know, like Cena, that would
not at all.
Because when you look at the course of wrestling history, there's a pivot point. You know, that Hogan heel turn changed the entire trajectory of wrestling in general. The way wrestling was booked, that really ignited WWE to change their storytelling and get out of the new gen and get into the Attitude Era. So it's like, who knows where wrestling would be at right now if they would have made that decision to make a move like that.
No, I'll say this, talking about, you said, what was the last time they had that moment? When they had SmackDown with Roman Reigns and they cut to that last scene with Paul Heyman sitting next to him, my jaw did drop then because I wasn't expecting, you know, Roman Reigns to be paired with Paul Heyman. So that's like the closest that they've come, you know, since the Shield moment.
Yeah, but I feel like that's still kind of, it doesn't hit hard.
No, it doesn't. But that's like as close as it has come. Like, I just remember being shocked by that.
Yeah.
Turn him heel. Should have fuck the kids.
How you really feel, Sneed. Don't hold back.
Do you think him being a baby face for as long, you know, that run, do you think that hindered, almost put like a ceiling on Cena? I know Cena's like the biggest, everyone talks about him in these hushed tones of greatness, Mount Rushmore for some people, not me, but you know, that generation that really came up around then. But do you think he could have been even bigger in the eyes of the fans that maybe wasn't of his time? Like, you know, like for instance, the guys I look at are the Stone Colds and the Ric Flairs. Cena was kind of like after my adolescence. So I didn't connect to him like the kids who were growing up during the Cena reign. But do you think if he would have turned, would it have connected more to every fan outside of just the kids of that time?
I think that's a pretty fair assumption. I think so. I think it would have made a major difference.
I think being a heel, being a career baby face, I think it definitely, I mean, he's Cena. I'm not trying to take away from what he's done, but I think he could have been bigger. I think
Rey Mysterio is also, and correct me if I'm wrong, like Rey Mysterio has been wrestling like longer than I've been alive. He's been like a babyface like his entire career too. Like, am I right? Yeah, which is like pretty rare. And and he's also one who's very over with the kids and all of that. And I think that might have been a reason why too, like Rey was never turned either. So, I mean, I get it business wise. I think ultimately it was business wise why they never turned him heel. So I don't know. And
I think Ray's kind of petered out. Like, you know, he's another guy like that. I feel like later in his career, he hasn't, I think almost a better example and is Sting. Sting has pretty much been a babyface from jump. Yeah. And I think that's probably the best career babyface we've seen. Never turned, always been the good guy. But
the closest we ever got to him was the what's going to happen. He never turned.
Yeah. But I think what helped him out was he had that just complete character change.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
That freshened him up and made him, when he did the crow change, that almost put him on a mythic level of like an Undertaker where he didn't need to do the baby face or the heel. He became bigger than that.
Yeah.
But with Cena, you know, Ella called him the Fruity Pebble. You know, like we had like a decade of Fruity Pebble, you know?
Yeah, I mean that's who I saw growing up. Like John Cena was the first ever t-shirt I ever got, first ever autograph I got. He was pushed to the moon when I started watching professional wrestling. And so for me, it's crazy to think about if he had gone down that different trajectory, like what my like adolescence would have been like.
And it would have been easy for him to lean into it too, because the chance of him coming out to the John Cena suck, like I mean, those were, it would be to the point where he would come out and play to it.
And here's the thing with any great heel turn, it makes you a bigger babyface.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like you do that dastardly thing, people hate you,
Yeah.
and then you're so good at being that son of a bitch that people start to like you again.
Mhm.
Roman's starting to get a little bit of that. Like some of these people are starting, he's starting to get a little bit of those cheers. So
He's also cutting babyface promos at house shows. So
Yeah, go back to Hogan at Mania versus The Rock, and the fans couldn't wait to cheer him. That was just an electric moment. You knew eventually Hogan would turn face again, and you knew it would be amazing when he did, and it was just perfect storm for the way that it actually happened.
yeah, that's the thing. When you're a babyface of that level, whether it's Hulkamania or Austin 316 or Cena's run, I feel like no matter what you do on the back end of your career, you can always double back to those glory days, and the fans will remember it and love you for it.
it's that shot of nostalgia.
Yeah.
There
Yep.
you go.
All right. Anybody have any final thoughts before we move on to the final topic?
No, that was a fun one.
Yeah, it was fun.
Fuck those kids.
That's right. It's a t-shirt coming soon.
I don't know if we could get away with that one.
Oh yeah.
Oh, Teespring, you can get away with whatever. All right. Final topic of the evening. If Windham Rotunda never returns to professional wrestling, how important is the legacy of Bray Wyatt?
Okay, just to set this up, Mike Rotunda, their dad, IRS, Money Inc., was on, I believe,
VK Wall Street.
VK Wall Street. He was on Bradshaw's podcast, and he talked about he doesn't know if they're going to come back. He was like, "Oh, they might come back, but they're trying out different passions." And it just got me thinking, like, I think he will come back. I don't think that's a question, but it got me thinking, what if he didn't come back? What would be Bray's legacy in pro wrestling? And for me, you see so many guys come and go in WWE. Like you'll have these brief runs where they're at the top and then they're gone. Remember Ahmed Johnson, Pro River Plunge? At one point he was huge, and then he's just gone just gone. Now I think Bray left in it way bigger impact than Ahmed Johnson, but what would be his impact? Would he just be that kind of gimmicky guy? 20 years from now, when we're looking back, how do you guys view Bray Wyatt?
I mean, I would remember him as a guy I enjoyed. I loved the Wyatt family when they first came up. They had epic battles with the Shield. So anytime they fought, those matches were amazing.
Yes.
You could just go back and watch them over and over. It's the one time I didn't mind WWE's repeat booking because of how good they were. But yeah, like it would be like, oh yeah, he was good, but it's not a long-lasting memory. And I disagree with you. I don't think he wants to come back. I don't think he loves wrestling, which is why his asking price is so high. The rumors are.
Really?
I think he's like, hey, if I'm gonna go back and do this, I need to make it worth my while. I want to go back and make all this money.
Wrestling's in his blood, man.
Yeah, I don't
He
feel
might
that.
be burnt out. I don't know. He doesn't. He disappeared.
Burnt out. They didn't use him. They
But
trotted him out in some bullshit.
Tom, they burnt him up. He's not burnt out.
He's also a father now, I might add.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just feel like he doesn't want to be there, and if he's gonna be there, he wants to really make it worth his while.
I just think he knows his value.
And he knows.
I
his
think
price
he
tags.
knows that he is a big guy, and it's like I'm getting paid if I
But
come
if
back.
the longer he waits, the less his value is going to be to come back.
I don't think so. I think it's bigger.
Really?
It's not 5 years removed, but I think if he returns in a year from now, it's going to be massive. People will remember.
They'll remember, but like I said, I don't think he wants to be there, which is why his asking price is so high.
So you think if the Fiend comes out at next year's WrestleMania, lights go out and the Fiend comes out, you don't think people will care?
They'll care, but the more time that goes on,
the roof will blow, dude. The roof will blow.
I just think for some reason with him, they care less as time goes on. I think he needs to get back if he wants to come back, and soon.
Wow. Interesting.
I feel like his legacy is kind of like the one that got away, the one that had some opportunities, but was also never pushed to the moon. Like him, his WWE Championship reign or Universal Championship reign was like, what? At least the first one was like, what, 2 weeks long?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
but he won it, won at Rumble and then lost it at Chamber.
Yes.
Is that what I'm remembering?
Yep.
Yeah. And like his reigns were never anything really lengthy or worthwhile. It was kind of like a transitional champion, which is it's so baffling considering like his character could have so many storylines with so many people. Like his entity in WWE was so character driven once he turned to Bray Wyatt with the Wyatt family and then into the Fiend, but he was never, I feel like, really it feels weird to say properly pushed. The execution was just poor. There was no real, I feel like, consistency in any of it. Obviously there was some really cool moments like with the Wyatt family, with the lantern and all of that, but the execution, like in moments of his career, I feel like weren't outstanding, and I feel like that's going to take away from his legacy if he were to never return to wrestling. I feel like people are going to be like, yeah, he was good, but we never got to see him like fully blossom, and I feel like we've seen that with a lot of people.
I mean,
I was gonna say one thing, like the thing that his legacy to me would be the legacy of a missed opportunity.
Yeah.
Like he was great. He had really fun moments, but when I think of Bray, I think of like, man, there is so much left on the table in that WWE run. Like they could have done so much more. They had him drop that fucking belt to Goldberg. I mean, come on, man.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about a derail. Oh my! And that whole Hell in a Cell thing with Seth was just terrible.
That was awful.
I mean, let me ask you guys this question: if he does come back, where do you think it would make the most impact? Is it WWE or somewhere else?
I feel like it's terrible. Everyone wants him to go to AEW, but I feel like he would just get ultimately lost in the shuffle because, of course, you're going to have that big pop. But we've seen that happen. Somebody's arrived. Of course, there's buzz at first, but then they get lost in the shuffle because the roster is so saturated, and that is my fear for it. So I don't know where I would like to see him maybe end up, to be honest with you. If it's in AEW, of course, you're going to have that wow factor at first, but the roster is just so expansive that there's just frankly not enough time on their card to be able to, I think, properly showcase him.
Yeah, I think if he comes back, obviously WWE would love to have him back, the fan base at least. But I wouldn't want to see him in AEW right now, just by the way they're handling booking and the way everything's so sporadic. But having said that, I would like to see Bray with unlimited freedom. I would love to see what he brings to the table when he didn't have to go through so many checks and balances like WWE has. But if he were to come back and part of his signing or contract was that he is a true focus week to week, where he takes up a large section of their booking, and Tony Khan, to get him there would be some sort of agreement where he becomes the big bad in that company for a year run, and we just get to see him unload and really take the company by storm. I would love to see him just untethered and going at it in AEW. But right now, if he comes into that company, he's going to, like you said, lost in the sauce all day. But yeah, man, that's a good question, Tom. I don't know where. I told Sneed, I don't know what show it was on. We were talking about it, and I don't want to see him for like another year. I don't want to see AEW sign another big person at least for a year. Figure out who you have. Let us settle on all of these big surprises, and then bring Bray Wyatt out at Double or Nothing 2024 and blow me away or something like that. I don't want to see him right now.
Let them set up Ring of Honor. Let things get
that's what I was going to say.
Stop bringing people in. Get it all worked out, and then you can start bringing people in again here and there when you need to.
Because once the snow globe settles over in AEW and ROH is figured out what they're going to do with that, there are big names that they have now that they need to figure out. But there's big names out there too that if they sign and do it right would be huge, especially with the creative freedom that they could have. And I agree with what you said, Chad. I think if Bray Wyatt comes over and he's guaranteed that he's going to have the freedom and the push, then I think AEW would be the spot for him.
So like, what Sneed, what do you think about his legacy though? I don't think you answered the,
as far as his legacy, like pretty much I agree exactly with what Ella said. Like I think if I were to think about his legacy, if he never returned, it would be, man, that guy could have done something more. I think he could have been a lot better.
and it's a really weird kind of how they booked him, because I think when Ella was talking about it, she kind of like stopped, because it's hard to say he didn't get a push because they obviously put heat behind him. You know, he had one of the most unique entrances, and then with the Fiend and the Firefly Funhouse segments, that was like they were giving him room, but it's almost like they would let him get creative. They would give him enough leash to get creative. And then once the fans really started jumping on his creativity, which a lot of that feels like it came from Bray, from Windham Rotunda, then it's almost like the movie business. They'll bring the creatives in, let them write the script and be like, "Ooh, we love the script." And then all the producers come in, the non-creatives, and put their fucking fingerprints all over it. It's like they would let him do his thing and then pull him back and not let him go full tilt. And he's a guy that I want to see just go, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like a shame early in AEW when Brody came over from WWE, you know, it wasn't the craziestness it is now with all the new free agents. So he got to shine and do his thing. And that's how I would have loved to seen, you know, Windham Rotunda come here and get to do his thing. Like I said, for now, let him sit out. And if this is where he shows up, let it be in a year after the dust settles and everything's worked out.
I will say his release was the most shocking out of any release for me.
Yeah, for sure. And he was the only one announced that day. That wasn't even.
Yeah, he wasn't a part of the cut. Yeah.
Yeah, because if he would have came with any other cuts, people would have had a heart attack. It's like, okay, this one's big enough. Let's just release him by himself today.
Yeah.
What do you guys think? The Fiend or the Wyatt family? For me, it's the Wyatt family.
Wyatt family,
no doubt.
I mean, that kind of brought me back to wrestling. I had a buddy in New York who messaged me and was like, "Chad, they're doing some crazy hillbilly shit on WWE. You'll like it. Come watch it." And I'm like, okay, I'm going to check it out.
The way the whole, like, we're here, the entrance with the lights and the music, it was perfect. It was, love the Wyatt family.
I remember seeing him at a house show before he had I guess he had broken his nose and he had the nose guard on. And when he came out at the house show, he didn't have any music and he came out just talking. And I was like, man, this is cool as fuck. Like,
who is this guy?
And then he showed up on TV a few months later and was like, man. Then from then, like the Wyatt family was just, that was for me, definitely that over the Fiend. Yeah.
Who you got, Ella? Fiend or Wyatt?
I think it would have to be, why not Husky Harris? I'm kidding. But I think I would prefer the Wyatt family too. I think you could technically the rest of the three of them are kind of free agents, so it's possible they could have a reunion, but I also think that like rebuilding it too would be a cool thing, or expanding it. And maybe we can finally find out who Sister Abigail is.
Oh yeah. That would be a cool, like, so if he would return to WWE, I would rather him return as Bray Wyatt than the Fiend.
Oh yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah. Or send him to AEW and have Abaddon be Sister Abigail.
I don't hate that.
I don't hate that.
I don't hate that. Yep. I love Abaddon.
I'm a big Abaddon fan.
Love Abaddon. Yeah. This was fun. Anybody
have
any
great
final thoughts before we end it?
No, it was fun.
It was awesome. All right, Ella. Well, tell everybody where they can find you. It sounds like there's probably going to be a lot, so plug it all.
No, we'll make it easy. If you go to my Twitter, where it says right here at It's Ella J on Twitter, there's a link tree in my bio with most of my links to all my podcasts and projects, or you can follow me on Instagram too at a wrestling gal as well.
Awesome. Yeah, guys, go check it out. Tons of stuff coming from Ella. give it a follow. Real quick before we get out, just do a little round robin. Do you guys think Jade, I haven't told anyone this question, this is off the top of my head, do a little round robin question, just yes or no. Do you think Jade will be in the WWE within the next 5 years?
No.
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 Yes. I'm going to be different and just say yes.
Mark this shit down. You need to mark this down because
so we can call him out on it 5 years from now.
From 5 years from right now.
I think she's WWE material, but I think they soured her when the way they made their approach to Jade. I don't know if she'll I think she might be AEW faux life.
5 years is a long time in a wrestling business.
It
So
really
you
is.
never know.
It
You
is.
never know.
Anything could happen.
All right, guys. Well, that's going to wrap us up for the evening. Make sure you guys are following Everything Tavern at theturnbuckletavern.com. Tom, I think it's your time to shine, bud. Go for it.
Turnbuckle sessions every Friday. Me and Mike Belcast, a Fig Night Tuesday nights. The OG Fig Kid, Twitter and Instagram.
And you were a little long-winded there tonight.
Yeah, he did. He got it all in.
Yeah, he did. All right, court is dismissed.